You tour a lot of facilities. What stood out to you in touring this facility?
Well, the Carti Surgical Center obviously has the most cutting-edge technology and also the most kind of patient-friendly advances in using natural light, the private rooms, and really trying to make sure that patients who are going through one of the most troubled times of their lives have comfort and care that matches the quality of expertise that Carti provides.
And you'd missed the grand opening last week. What made you want to definitely get that tour?
Well, one thing I always try to hear about is if there are any pinch points or problems that a place like the surgical center here at Carti has with the federal government. So we talk some about their relationship with the VA hospital, with Medicare and Medicaid, with TRICARE, areas where they may be struggling, but I and my colleagues in the Congress could provide some help for them and more importantly for their patients.
It's been a busy week politically. I don't know when there isn't one, but I want to ask you, what has surprised you the most after the indictment of the former president earlier this week?
Well, I'm disappointed to see the indictment of the former president. I think there's an uneven application of justice. If you compare the case of President Trump with Hillary Clinton from 2015 and her emails, I think the FBI applied different standards. I don't think that's ever good. I think it's especially worrisome when you're talking about one of the two major parties' leading candidates for office. I don't think you should proceed with legal charges in something that's kind of on the edge or that's pressing legal theories forward. I don't think it's healthy for our body politic.
Have you had a chance to read through the indictment? Obviously very busy. How much have you read of it?
I've reviewed the indictment. Obviously, indictments are just the government's case. I would point out the indictment speaks a lot about the Espionage Act, which generally handles or covers the handling of classified information. It says nothing about the Presidential Records Act, which handles how former presidents like Donald Trump, like Barack Obama, like Bill Clinton handled both classified and unclassified material. So I suspect we'll be hearing more about that from the president's lawyers.
Former Governor Hutchinson here appears to have tried to talk to party leaders about amending the loyalty pledge that seems to be awaiting whatever happens at the end of the primary season. What's your reaction to efforts like that?
Well, I don't think the Republican National Committee has released the exact language of the pledge, so I think it's probably premature to assess it. But as someone who decided not to take a run at the presidency myself, I don't plan to play strategist or pundit this cycle. I wish all the candidates the very best, and I look forward to supporting whoever our voters choose as our nominee.
But it does make you kind of an expert opinion. What to you do you think, at what point, without getting into hypotheticals, but at some point there has to be a part where you think we do need to rethink the backing of somebody who could be facing this kind of legal peril? At what point does that rise to that level for you?
Well, like you said, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals about what may or may not happen in this case or any other case, or what the Republican National Committee will actually say in the pledge that they're asking candidates to sign to appear on the debate stage. Again, I'm going to be watching the presidential campaign as Republican voters across the state are, across the country are, and whoever our Republican voters choose as our nominee is who I'll be supporting for presidency next year over Joe Biden.
What's your reaction to Governor Hutchinson's campaign so far as a fellow Arkansan?
Again, I'm not going to assess any candidate's campaign. I know almost all the candidates very well, whether it's Governor Hutchinson, Governor DeSantis, Senator Scott, President Trump. Like I said, I wish them all well, and I'll see what our voters decide next spring.
A couple of quick constituent questions. How quick or how readily could we get more HIMARS missiles out of Camden and over to East Ukraine?
Hopefully very quickly, because they need them in Ukraine, and we're also building a lot of weapons in in Camden. They're going to backfill the weapons we've sent from our own stockpiles. One thing we need is a higher defense budget. That's why I was so worried about President Biden's request for a very low defense budget. I'm also concerned about workforce development. I want to make sure that we're getting the very best workers we can from across Arkansas, that they're aware of the high-paying, high-value jobs in South Arkansas outside of Camden at the Defense Industrial Park there.
Are there any pinch points that you're trying to overcome when it comes to that?
So in many cases, what I've seen is that the defense industrial base has just atrophied somewhat over the last 30 years. I think the war in Ukraine has shown some of those problems. Some of the choke points where it's not just the rare input, very common inputs, things like ball bearings or valves or what have you, that provide. You have subcontractors going to all the major defense contractors or going into non-defense industries as well. We need to make sure that we're focusing all the way down to the lowest level of the defense industry, and that we can turn these weapons around very quickly, because it's not just about Ukraine, it's even more about our own military and the defense of our own nation, whether it's from threats in Europe or more likely threats from China and the Western Pacific.
And hyper-local, because I live in Hot Springs. The old Arkansas Rehab or Army Navy Hospital is back on the Pentagon's books. I know the whole delegation's aware of it. You're particularly close to the Pentagon. What's the status of that place right now, and keeping it from turning into a big mess?
Well, no one wants it to be run down, to turn into a place that's a danger for the community. I've spoken with the governor about it. Senator Bozeman and I recently met with her. In fact, we have a meeting in Washington very soon with officials in the government to speak with them about the plan to make sure that facility doesn't turn into a danger to the entire community. It's complicated. There are certain steps that we are going to have to take to ensure it remains safe, but it's a top priority for me and Senator Bozeman, our congressional delegation, as it is for Governor Sanders.